So you had some comments about the FBI in the article. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of the backstory behind it. And that is that I'm on a State Department security group called OSAC. And we have regular meetings, and I get to meet with security professionals. And I've had active shooter training from one of the Benghazi 13 heroes, which was really interesting. And I've also had most recent seminar at the U.S. Embassy here was with Dr. Russell Palorea, who ran the behavioral analysis unit for the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, otherwise known as NCIS, like the TV show. And Dr. Russ did a great job in teaching us that community-based threat assessment is the way to go. And it means you're looping in more of the community. Instead of just the security office and the police, you're looping in coaches, you're looping in counselors, you're obviously looping in teachers. But you're going further back on the timeline, so to speak. You're reaching further back, and you're looking for clues, telltales, because all of them have telltales, whether it's suicide, most suicides, and the active shooter, the violent perpetrator, they leave telltales. Many of them just signal their intent just beforehand, or days and maybe even weeks. The point is that there are ways of identifying them. So the FBI plan is the one that I asked him, okay, so which plan is out there that includes the community-based threat assessment? And he said the FBI plan. I thought, okay, great. So the FBI plan, you go through this and you'll see the disconnect with primary care here. You go through the plan, and it doesn't make any mention really of primary care. And I asked Russ about this in the seminar, the first break. I went up to him and I said, "What about primary care docs? Where are they in this picture?" And he said, "They don't want to do it." And I thought, okay. And time was short. I didn't want to get into it. I knew why. It's because they don't have the time. They're seeing 30, 40 patients a day, 2 to 3% of their panel size, the number of patients they have. So they don't have the time. It's 15 minutes, and by the time they're done, they're beat. They're done for the day. They're not going to be at their best going to a meeting about threat assessment. So I said, okay, fine, let me send you something. So I sent him a copy of my book, and I said, the key here are direct primary care doctors. They have the time to go to these meetings, educate people there on top of the parents on why this is important. And then I also saw something in there. I didn't see something in there that I knew you'd appreciate. And I knew from a conversation with a community pharmacist in Florida, and she enlightened me about the relationships with the customers. And I remember my pharmacist growing up, and Bob Stensby was his name. And he knew everyone. I mean, he knew me. And when I remember having a prescription that he was like, something's not right here. Let me call, or I don't think something's right here, but let me double check. So he called my physician. The physician said, no, that's what I want. And it's fine. So, okay, good, But he knew enough to double check. And he knew me and knew, age. I don't know what it was, but he saw something that he wanted to double check, because he knew me and he knew my family. And as it turns out, you do the research, and I included some of the links. Community pharmacists are among the most approachable healthcare professionals in the system, in any system.
Yep.
And the research coming out of England and Canada and the US shows that community pharmacists play an important role in preventing suicides. And because they have the family connection, if you will, they have a family view, they're able to spot changes in behavior too. Community pharmacists are not in the FBI plan. So in the article, I boldly suggested, humbly but boldly, that we ought to include direct primary care doctors and community pharmacists in the assessment groups, both suicide and behavioral threat assessment teams. And in the article, I also have a few questions that how to get involved. So asking, okay, who's on the team is a good way to start. And now you know what to listen for. Do we have a community pharmacist on our team? Do we have a primary care physician, let alone a direct primary care physician? We know the ideal, the benchmark are those two things. Get as close to that as possible. So again, I sent that on to Russ. He's a very busy guy, and I don't expect to hear back from him anytime soon. But I told him I made kind of a bold suggestion. We'll see what he says when he gets back to me. But yeah, I think there's so many things that we could be doing, but we're wrapped up in the blame game. We're wrapped up in pointing fingers, and it's becoming clickbait, and it's a sporting event, and it's not really doing the kind of real change that we need. And by using these two events, the suicide and the mass shooting, as a focal point to put a spotlight on going further back to primary care and how do we get that right, using direct primary care as the standard of excellence, we're going to do a lot more to prevent these problems and these challenges and the tragedies than outlawing drugs or outlawing certain types of weapons. Yeah. We really are going to go get rid of the frustration. People will go, okay, now we have a plan. And hey, this isn't that difficult. It isn't easy, but it's not hugely difficult.
Right.